This morning, we continue reading from the Gospel of John, where Jesus is once again proclaiming the flesh and drink of heaven. Jesus said, "Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like that which your ancestors ate and they died, but the one who eats this bread will live forever." He said these things while he was teaching in the synagogue at Capernaum. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life, but among you there are some who do not believe." For Jesus knew from the first who were the ones that did not believe, and who was the one that would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by the Father." Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God."
Please be seated. Good morning. Great to see everybody this morning. Great to be back with you. Feels like summer is coming to an end, and so it's great to have all of us together again. And as we move into fall, I hope you'll make this an important part of your fall routine. Summer is a time for me when I ponder. I mean, I like to ponder all the time, but summer gives me some of those opportunities to ponder a little more often than I sometimes do. And this summer in particular has given me a lot to ponder. It's also been a while since I preached. I think it might have been about 2 months. So I'm thinking maybe 45 minutes this morning or so. I mean, that seems reasonable to me, right? Let's pray together. Oh, Lord, may your words only be spoken and your words only heard, and do, Lord, help me keep it short. Amen. How's that? Is that fair? I want to begin with a question this morning, and my question for you is simply this. What battle are you fighting? What battle are you fighting? Because here's the thing I know. We're all fighting battles. It's part of what it is to be a human being, whether we admit it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not. We're all fighting battles. And the real question is the battle you're fighting the right one? Is the battle that you're fighting, is the battle that I'm fighting, the battle that's really going to make the difference that we need to be made? Or is it just a waste of time and energy? As I've thought about this, one of the people who helped me think about this is a guy by the name of Frederick Buechner. He is a writer and a preacher, just one of the best people with words I've ever read. And he says that every human being is always fighting a multitude of battles, but they boil down to two principal battles. And the first of those principal battles that we all engage in is a battle of conquest. And that is to, in some way, shape, or form, conquer the world. It's a little bit like Pinky and the Brain. Any of you remember Pinky and the Brain from the Animaniacs? What are you going to do today? Is it Brain? Going to take over the world. That's exactly. Going to try and take over the world. That is exactly right. And the truth is, in some way, shape, or form, that's exactly what we do. If not the whole world, then our little piece of the world. We want to take a little piece of the world and make it the way we think the world should be, to find our own little quiet place where everything is as we would like it to be, as we think it should be, as we think we deserve it to be. And the only problem with that is that everybody else views the world a little bit differently than we do. And everybody thinks the world should be a little different than we do. And so that battle necessarily involves us in conflicts with other people, as they want the world one way and we want the world another way. Those battles, when it all is said and done, they often come down to battles about me, about me and my family over against you and your family, what I think a family should be, what I think, and what you think it should be. Me and my relationship to my country or my political party or my worldview is over against you and what you think all those things should be. Me and my race, perhaps, and again, all those things come down to an extension of myself, my own identity projected out into those larger things, but they're my fight for that place, that little place, even that little place where things are as I want them to be, as I think they should be. And that is very much a battle against other people because other people see it differently, right? They're wrong, but they see it differently. And in this battle, the thing that is necessary is not the armor of God. And in the reading from Ephesians, which we did not read in this service, but which is in your bulletin, which I hope you'll take home, bulletin insert, and read. In fact, I'd like to read it every day this week, and I'll say a little bit more about that. But Paul talks about taking on the armor of God. And this is to fight the second battle, which we haven't got to yet. But in this first battle, this battle of conquest, which is fought against other human beings, what we need is the armor of man. And I do use the gendered word man there, because so often these battles down through the ages have been battles against men, have been between men. And in this battle, we can sort of play with the metaphors. Paul gives us these metaphors of things that are the armor of God. He talks about a helmet, a breastplate, shoes, so on and so forth. And we can think about what the armor of man looks like as overopposed this. And so in this battle, in the armor of God, it's the helmet of salvation. In the armor of humanity, in the armor of men, it's the helmet of looking good, of looking pretty darn good. In the gospel, it's in Paul's writing, it's the breastplate of righteousness. In the armor of man, it's the breastplate of confidence. And again, we'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. It's the shoes in the armor of God. It's the shoes that are prepared to spread peace in the world. And in the armor of man, it's the drive to succeed. And it's the belief that we can have anything we want if we just run hard enough for it. That's what we put our feet to, is running hard after what we want. We get on that little rat race that we all think about from time to time, that little hamster wheel, just where we run as hard as we can after things that seem that matter, but where we don't seem to move too much. And these become the kind of things we put on not the truth of self, not the belt plate of truth as in the armor of God, but we gird our loins with worldly wisdom. And of course, worldly wisdom says, it's that sad old tired wisdom, dog eat dog. God helps those who help themselves. Charity's got to begin at home. This is the wisdom of human beings, and we use it in our battle against other human beings, try and carve out some little place in this world that we can call our own. But there is another kind of battle that is fought, and it's very different than this first battle. And it is not a battle of conquest, but it's a battle of liberation. And what we're liberating is ourselves. What we're liberating is that self that, in fighting this other battle, we've somehow lost. And what we're liberating is this self that has become misshapen as the powers of the world, we've interacted with the powers of the world around us. And so Paul will say in the reading from Ephesians today, which I would encourage you to read, is he'll say, stand firm against the wiles of the devil. And the key word in this reading is going to be the word stand. You're going to see it repeated over and over and over again. And it's this word that suggests it's our responsibility to stand up against these forces that would shape us, or more accurately said, misshape us. And however we understand the devil, some of us will understand the devil as a literal representation, a literal being. Other of us will represent this as a way of talking about all the forces of evil that work against the purposes and plans of God. However we understand the devil, Paul says, stand against those forces which would shape you or misshape you into a person that's not made for God, but a person who's only made for ourselves and our lower nature of surviving in a often perilous world. And so in this battle, again, this battle is against, as Paul puts it so eloquently, it's not against flesh and blood. It's against dark forces. And whether we understand those dark forces supernaturally, or whether we understand them as those subterranean forces of our mind, systems of thought, all these things which shape, or more accurately, misshape us, it's a battle that rages within each and every one of us. And it's the battle to be fully human. It's the battle to be the people that God created us to be and desires us to be and dreams that we will be. No matter who we've been, that God continues to dream that we may yet be this person. You know, a person who does address the darkness within, a person who is noble. I love that word. It's an old word, but it's a word I just think about sometimes. What does it mean to be noble? What does it mean for you to be noble? So many things we could be, and so often we are anything but noble. To be fully compassionate, to be forgiven, to work hard for others, to work hard for the good of others. This I think is what Paul's talking about when he's talking about to stand strong against these dark forces which will prevent us from being fully human and behaving more like an animal who just wants to survive than human beings who live into their higher nature. And he says that in order to do this, the only way you can fight this battle is by using, in fact, the armor of God. And this is what I'd like you to do throughout the week. I'd like you to take the bulletin insert home, and every day I'd like you to read this passage from Ephesians. If you don't want to if you want to, you could read it out of the Bible as well. And look at the various metaphors in the armor of God. So, for instance, it talks about feet shod with the gospel to proclaim peace, or I forget exactly what it says, something to that end. And the thing is to look at each of those metaphors: a sword, a breastplate, a helmet, a shield, and shoes. And think about where the point of contact with the world is and what the various pieces of armor protect and how they protect it. So feet are our primary place of contact with the world. This is where we come into contact with the world. And he says, and what he prays when people adopt the armor of God is that our primary point of contact with the world is that we would work for peace. You think of how we come into contact with the world, our primary point of contact with the world. In this day and age, there aren't many people who their primary place of contact in the world is working for peace. Not working for their own little world the way they see it and view it, the way they want it to be, which is where I think we all pretty much are, but really saying there's something higher and something holier and working for that peace that, in fact, Jesus died that all of us might know and find together. So you can just go through it with things like that. The helmet of salvation. What is salvation really? What does a helmet protect? Well, maybe it protects the mind. What is salvation? That's a good question. What is salvation? And how does salvation protect what's in the mind? That's what I'd love you to talk about during the week. Today, I just want to focus on one little part of that, and just that even very briefly, and that is the belt of truth, all right? The belt of truth is that which protects our core. In the old days, when I used to train a lot, we trained for show muscles. We trained for big biceps. We trained for bulging pecs, massive delts, V-shaped lats, flaring quads. But nobody talked about core, because nobody cared about core. I mean, it wasn't showy. The core wasn't a showy thing. But in this day and age, we know that everything hinges on the strength of your core. I mean, the core is where it's at. Who cares about bulgy biceps? Well, I do. But more importantly is a strong core. And so the belt of truth is what protects our core. And the truth that's being talked of is the truth that's made known in Jesus. Because Jesus gives a life that is wholly devoted to love. And so if we want to know how we're doing in our life, what we do is we look at the life of Jesus and we put our life up next to the life of Jesus. And if we're doing great, Jesus is very loving and I've been following Jesus and I can see where I'm very loving, great. Keep doing that. But we put up the life of Jesus and say, ooh, Jesus lives one way and I might not quite have that down. Well, that's the point where I say, okay, I'm gonna need some work. That's what the belt of truth is all about. And here's the important principle on that. And this is just critical, but hard. And in order to put on the breastplate, to put on the belt of truth, we need to make a single fundamental commitment. And it's a single fundamental commitment I want you to make today. And that commitment is, I will not lie to myself. I will not deceive myself. Now that's really, really hard, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but that's the commitment. I will not lie to myself, even when hearing the truth about myself makes me feel bad about myself. Because sometimes hearing the truth about ourselves does make us feel bad about ourselves. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about long-term feeling bad about ourselves. I'm not talking about a pervasive feeling bad about ourselves, but we live in a day and age that tells us it's always a bad thing when you feel bad about yourself, right? It's not always a bad thing when you feel bad about yourself. There are worse things than feeling bad about yourself if in small doses, if for temporary periods, feeling bad about yourself helps you improve yourself. What's worse is to always want to feel good about oneself so that one is talking to oneself in a certain way or medicating oneself in a certain way or acting in a certain way that we never get to what's wrong with us. And again, here's the simple truth. There is something wrong with you. And if not you, certainly with me. We're not perfect. We don't always say that very often. Sometimes we say, it's all good. It's not all good. You know, you're perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You know, we all have faults and failings. And that can be awkward and painful, but it is the truth. And admitting that is the first step to doing something about it. And you know, the bad news sort of gets a little bit worse for just a moment. And that is to go on and say, do you know that I am the one, I hate to admit this, it's painful, it is. I am the one who has made every bad decision in my life. I am the one who has made every bad decision I have made in my life. There may be other people who have contributed to it. There may be other people who have influenced it. But in the end, I'm the one who has made that decision. And I need to take responsibility for that if any kind of different decision is going to be made in the future. And to stand firm against the wiles of the devil, to put on the armor of God absolutely requires that kind of decision, because a person cannot lead oneself if a person's lying to oneself. So putting on the armor of God requires us to lead ourselves, and that requires that we be honest with ourselves. And the problem with all this is that you're a sucker for you, and I'm a sucker for me. You know, I sell myself be better than anybody else on the way that I want to see the world, just like you sell yourself on the way you want to see the world. That's why the breastplate of righteousness in the armor of human beings, in the armor of man, is the confidence that I'm right, instead of seeing truth as complex, because truth is complex. To be able to wage in the kind of war we do with each other needs the kind of confidence that says that I'm right and I'm only right. I see this clearly and nobody else does, instead of recognizing that truth is always complicated. Truth is always complex. And any given issue we look at in this day and age, just about everybody who's coming at it, not everybody, just about everybody, there is some truth in what they're bringing to it. But I'm a sucker for myself, man. I want to see it the way I see it. Nobody does a better job of selling me than me. And you're a sucker for you, and nobody does a better job of selling things to you the way that you want to be sold things. But the truth is, sometimes we just got to take a hard look at ourselves and say, I'm not getting this right. And if I'm not getting this right, I need to do things differently. Recently, we were on vacation. It was a great little vacation. It was just a beautiful gift in that for the first time in years, because my kids are grown now, it aligned for all of us to go on a brief vacation for each other. And it was a wonderful thing. And my older daughter, as you may know, just got her doctorate, and we never did much for her in the whole education process. In fact, we never even knew when she got her master's. We decided we should reward her in some way, and this vacation was a way of rewarding her. So it was a great family vacation. The first week was Linda, Christine, and I. The second week, 5 days, Mary was able to get away. Our younger daughter, she came and joined us. And I was aware going into this vacation that I had a certain low-grade irritation. And I didn't really know why, but I just could feel it under there, just sort of prickly, like this low-laid current, And the problem with low-grade irritation is it doesn't take too long for it to become mid-grade irritation. And the problem with mid-grade irritation is it doesn't take too long, before it comes full-out aggravation. And so I'm on this vacation, and, I'm supposed to be relaxed, and it's beautiful, and it's great, and I am relaxed, it's beautiful, it is great, but there's some little things that are going wrong, and they're getting to me. And I know they shouldn't be getting to me, so I'm not really paying attention, trying to say, it's just they're not really getting, but they are getting to me. I mean, little things, like the fact that Iceland had the most rain they have had in recorded history. Which is not a bad thing unless you want to go fishing. Exactly right. It's not a bad thing unless you want to go fishing, and I always want to go fishing. And so the place where we were going to go, that they said 100% sure you're going to catch a fish here. Your daughter, you can take your daughter with her. She's never fished. She's going to catch a fish. There's fish everywhere. Everybody catches a fish. The first time they could ever remember that it was flooded and silted out so you couldn't even get near it. All right? So I laugh about that. Okay, big deal. Every fisherman knows that's the way it is. You know, so what? Ha, ha, ha. Makes a good story. I'll tell it in a sermon sometime. And, all that sort of stuff. But the truth of the matter is, it sort of got me inside. I want to say it's not a big deal, but in some sense it was a big deal. And so I just was aware of this low-grade aggravation. And I was trying to manage as well as I could have. And so it probably shouldn't have surprised me, but it did, when my older daughter, after that first week, Christine, sat me down and said, Dad, I just want to know, when did you stop being kind? Ooh, that hurts a little bit. And she wasn't principally talking about me not being kind to her, although I'm sure I failed in that regard as well. She was principally talking about my not being kind to my wife, Linda. And when she said that, I realized that, there's this insidious creep. It happens so slowly in such little ways that we don't even aware it's happening. And what I was doing is when the fishing is terrible, and I'm saying, oh, no big deal, but it is a big deal. And I can't deal with it in me, so I project it out in somebody else. Okay, nothing's wrong here, so something's wrong with you, and I won't deal with what's wrong here, but I'm going to deal with what's wrong with you. Or I can't deal with what's wrong in this situation because for whatever reason it's a little too threatening to me, so I'm going to make another situation that you're responsible for, and I want you to fix it. And so and they weren't necessarily big things, but they were these little things. And as I thought about it, I thought, oh, holy cow. And then she upped the stakes, and she said, and if you can't do it for me on this vacation, which is supposed to be my gift, she didn't say those words, but there was a clear implication. If you can't do it for me on this vacation, it's supposed to be my gift, and it's supposed to be about giving me something special, then at least do it for Mary. Now, that was a zinger. But the thing in that zinger that I was meant to hear was how painful this was for her when I mistreated her mom. She didn't want me to miss that. And it would be hard for me to express to you how hard it was to hear that, and how much that broke my heart. What do you do with it? Say, hey, man, don't you know? I mean, it's not a big deal. That wasn't a big deal. Or come on now. I was looking for this whole time. This didn't work out. I think I'm entitled to be a little bit aggravated. Or I'm just your dad. I'm a crotchety old guy anyhow. I mean, but what do you do with that? Sad thing is, I have made every bad decision I have ever made. So have you. I was the one who made the decision not to be kind and not to treat my wife as I would like to treat my wife. And so if I want to gird myself with the belt of truth and follow Jesus, I need to hear those words and receive those words and say, yeah, I'm so sorry. You're right. And it's a tremendously sad thing when a parent is being so infantile that the child has to be an adult. But thank you. Thank you. And if you want to know, as everybody did want to know, yes, the second week I did behave, and it was much better, much better, by God's grace and with God's help. Here's the final thing I'll say, is in this battle, which the principal battle we fight is with ourselves, it's with nobody else. In this battle to be kind, and I talk about being kind all the time, and I have worked so hard on being kind, yet clearly I still fail. We cannot do this on our own. And this is why Paul concludes this section by talking about prayer and saying if we really want to be liberated, if we really want to liberate our highest and best and most noble self, we're going to have to take it to the only one who can liberate us. We're going to have to take it to God in prayer. And I know that sometimes prayer seems like the most irrelevant thing on the face of the earth. I struggle with that too. I know that sometimes our prayers are as dry and as brittle as leaves in the fall. But here's the thing. I think it's worth praying anyhow. Because so often we experience prayer that way, it's because we're putting prayer in that conquest of creating the world that we want to have. It's in that conquest battle, that battle of things the way we think we should be. But prayer is not about that all, because the most important battle in our life, the decisive battle in our life, is not a conquest battle. It's a liberation battle. And that occurs only when we sit in the presence of God and allow the power of God transform us accordingly. You will be like the people you spend time with. Simple rule of life. So if we want to be like God, we got to spend time with God. And that's what prayer is all about. So my dear and beloved friends, I do pray that we would realize what battles matter most. What battles are you fighting? Choose them well. Don't fight on your own. Avail yourselves of the full armor of God, of the good people around you, and the power of prayer. Amen. Amen.